Guardians won one last night. Took 10 games.
Boy,
they got one.
You remember what that felt like to get a dub?
They beat a good team. Houston's a good team. 41-48, not where we thought they'd be. I said that, hey, finally we won one. And there were a lot of people going, they're still terrible. I go, okay, well, it's just not turned into the type of season we thought it was going to be. How do they get back on track? What is their actual plan here? Because a lot of people are upset with the Guardians not cashing in on the ALCS and not making themselves a better organization. Well, Tim Kurkjian's as plugged in as anybody has ever been in the history of baseball. And he joins us right now on the North Homestead Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram hotline, courtesy ESPN. And Is This a Great Game or What podcast with his son, Jeff Kurkjian. Tim Kurkjian joins us right now on the show. Tim, thanks for joining us this morning.
My pleasure, fellas. How are you?
We're doing wonderful. So a lot of people here in Cleveland are very upset with the Cleveland Guardians. What is their plan to bounce back from this season that looks like it's starting to tailspin and get back to within contention in the American League?
Yeah, well, they have to add some offense at some point because, they are 27th in the major leagues in runs scored. They're hitting 227 as a team. And I know it's the hardest hitting environment that we've ever seen in the history of baseball. I don't know how anyone gets a hit anymore with the pitching that we see, but you got to find more offense than what the Guardians have right now. And it's a challenge to find good hitters because the good hitters are staying with their current teams because teams need hitters so badly. So, the Guardians scored 7 runs in a game last night, and they had scored 7 runs in their previous 5 games combined. So this is what has to be done. They're going to have to go find some hitters somewhere. And like I said, that's easier said than done.
Yeah, Tim, obviously this has been a really rough stretch for Guardians fans. I've made the point that fans that have been annoyed with ownership over the last decade have had to be quiet many of the years because they've won as many games as they have. In fact, 4th most over the last decade. If you do the math, the 3 teams ahead of them, all of the biggest spenders in baseball. And yet there's been an outpouring of negativity over the last 48 hours in this town, not only for ownership, but for management. You're somebody who's not rooted in Cleveland, but you certainly follow what goes on. What would you say to that criticism?
Well, it's easy to say we need to spend a lot more money in order to improve the team, but the Guardians don't have a lot of money. The reason they've been so good over the years is they've drafted and developed players pretty darn well. And Chris Antonetti and his group deserve a lot of credit for the job that they have done with the Guardians. Now, ownership is going to have to get more involved here and try whatever it takes to improve this team. But you're right, they've been pretty darn good. And I'm just not sure that it's really fair to blast ownership and blast the front office for not improving this team when they've done an awful lot of good things the last few years.
Well, then, Tim, I guess I'd have to ask because, it's been a long time and championships don't fall off of trees. What would you say to the fans that then say, well, if he's that hard up for money, maybe Paul Dolan should just sell the team officially to David Blitzer, who seems to be the owner in waiting?
Yeah, well, again, that's easy to say when it's not your team and it's not your money. But look, it's okay for Guardians fans to be frustrated. I totally understand that. I would be frustrated also, but it just doesn't work that easily. When you have teams with payrolls like we have in the big leagues and others with payrolls that are $250 million less, it's really hard to work that way. But this is where we are right now. And you lose 10 games in a row a year after making the playoffs and you're 15 and a half games out before the All-Star break. That's a tough pill to swallow. I totally understand that, but it's just not that easy in baseball to put things together year after year after year without significant resources to deal with.
Tim Kurkjian joining us right now on the hotline. So I love getting your perspective because we're in it every day. And, baseball, we tend to follow our own teams more than we watch, the rest of the teams the way we do in the other sports. With that said, this team made an ALCS run a year ago. Then they get rid of Naylor. And we know the tightening of the money. They lost the $40 to $50 million in local cable TV revenue. So they have that much less to spend. They already weren't spending that much. Fans are really irritated that you could be an ALCS team one year and then slash payroll the next. Do you think that's a Guardians problem or a baseball problem?
Well, it's a baseball problem. I mean, just look at the Atlanta Braves, what's happened to them this year. Look at the Baltimore Orioles, what's happened to them this year. This is one of the ultimate beauties of baseball to me. This isn't going to do any good for Guardians fans, but teams get really good and really bad one season to the next, way more in this sport than any other sport. And that's what separates baseball. That's what makes it so interesting. How can the Guardians be struggling like this a year after going to the ALCS? Same things being asked in Baltimore, same in Atlanta, and every year there are teams that really disappoint you. I mean, I just saw the Texas Rangers. They for 3 games in San Diego. I mean, they won the World Series 2 years ago, and now they're one of the worst hitting teams in the major leagues. It doesn't make any sense. Baseball doesn't make any sense, which is one of its greatest attributes is you can't figure it out from year to year. And the Guardians are a team you can't figure out from year to year other than their bullpen, which is still great, isn't as great as it was last year. And their offense just hasn't been enough to get them anywhere close to the Tigers in the Central.
Tim Kurkjian joining us here on the show. So we've done a lot of wondering about people's futures on this or in this organization. Jose Ramirez is unthinkable. I know he has no trade clause and everything like that. So I'm not going to insult your intelligence or time with that. Stephen Kwan, I mean, he's got 2 more years of player control within this organization. I don't think they would move on from him until possibly next July. What do you think is more possible, though? Do you think it's more possible that they extend Stephen Kwan, give him money, or that they actually were to trade him at some point here over the next couple of years?
Well, I would hope for Guardians fans and for the Guardians, they would extend him rather than trade him. Stephen Kwan is a really good player, as everybody knows, and just as important, the way he presents himself on a daily basis, the way he plays the game with intelligence and with grit every single day. That's the kind of guy you need to build around. Plus, in this era where everybody strikes out because the pitching is so amazing, this is a guy who plays the game a little differently. He puts the ball in play. So I would, without a doubt, again, not my money, but I would extend Stephen Kwan before I would deal it.
You know, Kenny mentioned just now, Tim, Jose Ramirez. And when you look over the span of, the last decade, 6 top 6 MVPs in the American League, 3 top 3s. He's having another sensational year at the age of 32. Do you think he gets the respect nationally that you think he probably should?
Not really. I think everyone in the game recognizes what a great player he is and what a great player he's been. He has 4 top 5 finishes in the MVP race and has yet never won one. And the only 2 active players who have the same 4 top 5 finishes are Manny Machado and Nolan Arenado, and they haven't won an MVP either. So it's very interesting to me that there are 3 third basemen out there with the same MVP caliber voting, 4 top 5 finishes, and no MVPs to their name. But Ramirez is one of them, and people in the game recognize exactly who he is and what he's done. Maybe the average fan doesn't appreciate it, but dopes like me understand that guy is on his way to the Hall of Fame at a very, very fast rate, given what he's done by age 32.
Tim, I think it's always fun to discuss, especially in baseball, guys that play today, historically, with guys that played way back when. It has that type of rich history intertwined with Americana, so we know the names. But how do you go about comparing Shohei Ohtani to the greats that have ever played when he's doing something that you have to go back so far in time to find guys that actually both pitched and hit?
Yeah, he's different. He's like nobody who's ever played the game. Now, I am slightly different on this, that I think in 1920, if there had been a designated hitter in the American League, Babe Ruth would have hit 50 homers and won 20 games. I really believe that. And I still believe that Babe Ruth is the greatest player of all time just because he did it much longer than Ohtani has. And he was a great pitcher for a long time. He still has as many career shutouts as Pedro Martinez. Think about that for a second. However, Ohtani is the most remarkable player that's ever played the game. I don't think there can even be an argument about that, because as much as I love Babe Ruth, he wasn't hitting balls at 100 miles an hour as consistently as Ohtani does. He wasn't hitting pitches at 100 miles an hour as often as Ohtani does, and he didn't throw 100 miles an hour like Ohtani does. So he's a different guy. There's never been anybody like him. We need to recognize that we've never seen this player before, and I don't think I will ever see, I'm 68, I don't think I will ever see another player quite like Shohei Ohtani. That's who he is, and that's who he's going to continue to be.
Tim Kurkjian joining us on the show. He's the host of Is This a Great Game or What podcast with his son, Jeff Kurkjian, also of ESPN. He's an author. You know him very, very well. One of the best brains about baseball. Are we headed towards a work stoppage here soon?
Boy, I sure hope not. This is not a good time to shut down baseball, but the people I've talked to are not encouraged about the 2027 season, what's going to happen. But if they are really diligent, they have to get back to work, and I mean right now, in order to make sure that there is no strike or no work stoppage of any kind for 2027. Baseball is making a comeback. The players are unbelievably talented. Ratings and attendance is going up. People are more interested in baseball now than they were, say, 5 years ago. So we can't have anything to get in that way. But right now, the two sides are not particularly close on a lot of things. And I'm worried, but I think a lot of people in the business are worried where this is going in a couple of years.
Like, I don't think the players union would ever accept a salary cap. And I don't know if the owners would ever expect a salary floor, accept a salary floor. It does startle me, because I think for, like, in cities where sports are big, but it might not be the biggest one. Like, I think that because they don't have that, and Tim, you've heard this a million times, but I do. I think it's a killer. I think it's part of the reason we don't talk much baseball as much as we used to.
Well, you're right about the union. The union is not going to accept a salary cap, and ownership is going to have to recognize that, because this is what the union has been built on ever since Marvin Miller put everything together. And Tony Clark and his team is not going to go against what the union has done all these years. But we have to do something here to make the payroll disparity a little bit different. We have to do something with revenue sharing to help our smaller market teams. But these are huge questions that need to be answered. And right now, I'm just not sure there are enough answers this close to potential serious talks about labor.
Is the revenue pool? I know, TV contract, the TV numbers are up. Seems like attendance is up. However, the local TV money is going down and everywhere except for like LA and New York. So what does that mean for the two sides fighting this out?
Yeah, well, the local TV packages aren't what they used to be, and those have to get figured out also. Easier said than done. Everything is easier said than done. So work has to be done there to help get more TV money for these teams, and then they can use that TV money hopefully in order to improve their teams and make things more competitive. Because the difference right now between the really bad teams and the really good teams, as far as talent on the field goes, is the widest gap that I've ever seen in the 45 years that I've been covering. And it's just not healthy that the Rockies just lost their 70th game last night. It's not healthy that the White Sox were that bad last year and not a whole lot better this year. This needs to be changed to the point where the bad teams are more competitive and more teams move closer to the middle. But that's not happening anytime soon, and we got to work on that as an industry.
Find him on Twitter. Find him on ESPN. Find him on his podcast. Tim Kurkjian on the North Homestead Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram Hotline. Tim, thank you so much for the time.
Thanks, fellas. See you.
Yes, sir. Tim Kurkjian on that North Homestead Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram Hotline. All right, we have Lance Reisland joining us at 9:01. But, hey, you want to know why we don't spend a lot of time on him? Because of what Tim Kurkjian just told us. Don't want to blame Tim. I'm not going to blame the messenger. That's as dire as it gets. So there's times, and hey, guilty as charged. We do spend an inordinate amount of time on the Cleveland Browns. Sports talk radio in general spends an inordinate amount of time on football. Whether it be podcasts, whether it be actual over the radio, anything. The culture spends a lot of time on football. And we're in Cleveland, and we do spend a lot of time on the Browns. But this is part of the reason. I'm not blaming what we do on Tim Kurkjian here, and this is not Tim Kurkjian's fault. He's just telling us the truth. Because what do you hear? What do you feel when you hear Tim Kurkjian talk about the ownership of the Cleveland Guardians, the front office of the Cleveland Guardians is basically going, hey, you can't be that mad at him.
It's easy to say we need to spend a lot more money in order to improve the team, but the Guardians don't have a lot of money. The reason they've been so good over the years is they've drafted and developed players pretty darn well. And Chris Antonetti and his group deserve a lot of credit for the job that they have done with the Guardians. Now, ownership is going to have to get more involved here and try whatever it takes to improve this team. But you're right, they've been pretty darn good. And I'm just not sure that it's really fair to blast ownership and blast the front office for not improving this team when they've done an awful lot of good things the last few years.
It's not Tim Kurkjian's fault. What he's telling us in so many ways, because of how he covers baseball, is the truth. But it's also the truth that you can go, hey, I only got so much time to be mad before I just give up. By the way, there's plenty of people who've given up on the Browns for that matter, but I'm just saying, like, you have so little time to be mad in your life in the grand scheme of things before you either go, hey, you're going to get me back, or I'm just going to give up on you. And in the NFL, this is why, like, Lyme and I had this little mini debate on the phone yesterday about this. The question was asked to me, and you thought it might be summer hack. I think now it's as apropos as ever. We're not going to get a chance to get really into it. We have Lance Reisland coming up at 9:01. But it was asked, what's worse, a really bad Brown season or a really bad baseball season? And there's no doubt about it. A really bad Guardian season, 10, 15, 20 times worse. Because if you have a bad Brown season or you have a bad season in any NFL city, you can talk yourselves into the future and you have immediate gratification. We're going to fire that coach's ass. We're going to bring in a new coach. He's going to be fiery. He's going to win the opening press conference. We're going to have him bring in a general manager. This guy's going to be thinking. He's going to know what it takes to build a team. A lot of people are going to say a lot of nice things about him. Boom, we're moving in the right direction. In April, after my bleepy year, I get myself a brand new player right at the top of the draft. And guess what? I'm going to see him week one. And if he's good, if he's actually good, I ain't got to worry about nothing, and he's going to play for my football team for as long as he's actually good, especially if he's a quarterback. He'll probably play his whole career with us if he's an elite quarterback, or until we really can't use him anymore. And then I look at the Guardians and go, man, you have a bleepy year. I got to wait until next June to go get that draft pick. And then I got to wait another 4 years for that guy. And then you could sit there and fire managers and fire guys. It's just a giant rearranging the deck on the Titanic. It's a deck chair on the Titanic, it would seem to so many people. And I can't sit there and advocate firing a guy like Stephen Vogt, who just won Manager of the Year last year, for crying out loud. And then you sit there and you say, hey, unless I'm in New York or Los Angeles or really Chicago, I'm really just hoping for a chance. In the NFL, you can expect a chance. If you're poorly ran, it's a different story. But you can go, hey, I can start to lie to myself again. The NBA, I mean, as much as we're worried about the second apron now long term, we'll see how this works out. The NBA in so many ways is the same way. But, I mean, you're telling fans what the problem is with your sport overall. And in a city like Cleveland, in a city like Pittsburgh, in a city like Cincinnati, I know they have problems with the Bengals there. In any of these cities, football just devours Devours. And I can't, it's an insult of insults. As mean as we've been over the last 48 hours to the Guardians, it's the insult of all insults to compare the Guardians with the Pittsburgh Pirates, but they're in the same neighborhood.
But listen,
It's awful.
to what Tim just said. He basically took my side of this when we were arguing.
Yes.
And he's like, are you guys crazy? Like, the Guardians have been one of the models in all of baseball. And yet fans in Cleveland in this bubble are coming after the organization as if they're garbage, as if they don't try to win. And Tim is like, what?
And that's
like, are we taking crazy
But
pills?
you see, that's the problem. That's the problem. Because to Tim Kurkjian, he goes, man, they're in the same division as a team in Chicago if they ever got their head out of their ass, which they're selling part of the White Sox, right? Ishbia is going to eventually take over. So if they ever got their head out of their ass and started acting like a major market baseball team, look out for them. I know they've tried that once before and it hasn't really worked out. But think about this. He covers it from a New York perspective, a Los Angeles perspective, all the way down to the mid-market, small market teams. And he looks at it and goes, guys, you guys are crazy. Well, if I'm a fan here, I don't care about Paul Dolan's money. And if I can't get mad at the owner and I can't get mad at the front office, then I'm just going to not give a damn anymore. That's the way regular fans are going to see. That's what's killing your sport. Do you not understand? That's what's killing your sport. Do you understand why we don't sit there and argue about who bats fourth and bats fifth every single afternoon? Because fans don't care. Because it's who cares? Put Jonathan Rodriguez out there. I don't give a bleep. Oh, Will Wilson. They don't care. We used to have a lineup when we were playing in the same sandbox as these other teams. Look at the guys who never won a ring in the 90s. Good to bet Manny Ramirez, 8th at times. Who'd be a Hall of Famer if he didn't take pregnancy medicine? Look at that lineup. Oh, and you're looking at me, you know the truth. Look at the lineup. Those are Brenda arguing about, hey, who should bat fifth and who should bat sixth? Well, it's against this, and having visceral arguments. Now they don't care in these cities. Keith texted me about Bobby Witt Jr. No one outside of Kansas City cares about Bobby Witt Jr., and they're just watching him until the Chiefs start up. It's indicative of your entire system. And if fans are being told, you really sound like a bunch of idiots if you're yelling at the owner. Oh, okay, well, that's going to make it even better. Because, boy, they call the ownership on the other two leagues every name in the book when they don't win. That's your problem. That's your problem. So until they get that figured out, then I can sit here and get red-faced about the seasons, and there's still going to be that argument because that's why, hey, I didn't call you any names earlier this show. You know that. Usually we get mad at each other. Until they do that, there's going to be fewer and fewer people who care about that team over the corner of Carnegie in Ontario because they're going to go, it ain't worth my time. It ain't worth my anger. At least my other two teams play in a system where they can go out and they can get people. We in our city and 27 others, it's just a place that guys can go until a big market team can get them. It was a bad system then. It's a terrible system now. Cool Ray in Bedford. Hello.
Hey, what's up? Good morning, fellas.
Hi.
Hey, first, I listen to you guys every morning, but this comparison is flawed against the Browns and the Guardians. It's flawed for two reasons. One, you're comparing a losing organization to a fairly winning organization. So when you go, which would be the worst, a bad Brown season or a bad Guardian season? We already seen enough bad Brown season. It's a losing organization. You should have compared a bad Cavs season to a Guardian season.
Okay, same thing. Same thing. I can win a lottery. Hell, they've won the lottery, 4 times in my lifetime? 5 times in my lifetime they've won the lottery. And then that guy's going to play the next day, and he's going to immediately change the future of my franchise. Now I got to sit here and hope. I mean, we're clutching on to Travis Bazzano, who hasn't played in 8 weeks. And we're hoping that he might be called up earlier than usual. But everybody wants Chase DeLauder. Wasn't Chase DeLauder a first-round pick in 2018 or 19?
But here's the thing, don't get caught up with this small market thing. Like, this is why I tell people, like, the small market argument only works for those people who really believe in this crap. Because you got to look at New York. New York. It's There's so many baseball teams out there. Houston Astros, Florida Marlins, Minnesota, Baltimore. These are all teams who won championships, who got great players, who got all this money. It's not about that. It's just that the owners want to spend money, how much money they got in their pockets, because These players' monies are guaranteed. And nowadays,
The Marlins
baseball,
immediately had fire sales after their World Series.
baseball is one of the worst organizations to market their players. Any players, other than you can probably name maybe 10 players, Ohtani or whoever name is, or Bryce Harper, maybe 10 players you can actually name that get marketed. That's it.
Cool, Ray. I'm not excusing, but that's part of the reason is that these guys play in major markets here. I mean, he just admitted that Jose Ramirez is one of the best kept secrets in professional sports as a great player. And the other part of this, Cool Ray, is that, again, I'm not making an excuse for the bad Brown seasons past. There's no excuse for that. Thank you very much for the call. The comparison is that I can lie to myself. I can wrap myself in lies about the NFL and say, hey, we'll fire guys and we'll get immediate gratification. We'll get mad and we'll fire them, and then we'll draft another quarterback in the first round, and we'll immediately have hopes for the future. In baseball, it's like, oh, my God, I got to wait these years to get these guys. And then in a city like Pittsburgh, how about this? You draft one of the premier players, one of the premier prospects of this generation of Paul Skeens, and a calendar year later, they're already debating whether or not that team should trade him. That's good for professional sports. That's good for building long-term generations of fans. That's good. Okay. Just making sure.